Why does labor take so long? Why does labor stall out? Why is it that we can have this failure to progress happen so often? Well, that leads me to the final trap of the day, which is not eating and drinking. When they deny you food or drink. And the reason they deny you food or drink in labor is because they say you might aspirate if they need to do an emergency C-section. Let's look at that logic for a minute here. They are denying you fuel for your body that is going to allow you to have the energy to go through labor and push out your baby in case you need a C-section. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. What happens with a car that has no fuel? Does it go anywhere? No. If you have a plane and you have no fuel, what happens? Well, we're going to have a really bad crash, right? Same thing with your body. Your body needs fuel. This is why I tell my clients all the time, it's like, if you are having early labor signs and you still feel like eating, you want to eat protein-rich foods, because protein is it takes longer to digest. So you have more fuel. You do not want carbs. Those are fast energy things. And it feels crappy in your body and you crash. You have a sugar crash. We don't want you to have a sugar crash. We want you to be able to keep going. We want you to be able to rest. So oftentimes if labor stalls, one of the things that I did with my own labor when it stalled is I said, okay, I'm going to have a hamburger. I'm going to have the rest of my hamburger because I'm hungry again. Beforehand, I wasn't hungry. I didn't want to eat anything because I was in labor. But then my labor stopped and suddenly I was hungry again. So if you are at a point where you're like, I'm really hungry and I just want a cheeseburger, can't I just have a cheeseburger? And they're like, no, sorry, honey, you can only have ice chips, because if you need a C-section, you'll aspirate and then that will be a problem. No, I don't care what you have to do. Get your partner or your doula to sneak in a freaking cheeseburger and you eat it. And if they say you're not supposed to have food or drinks, like, you know what? I'd rather have this cheeseburger and puke it up during my transition rather than risk losing energy in my body and having a C-section because I now can't push my baby out because now labor has stopped and you guys have me on timeline. So please make sure you have food, make sure it's easy to digest, make sure you have water, make sure you have fluids. Coconut water is a really good one that you can have. Anything with electrolytes is really good for you to have in labor. In fact, I even had Gatorade just because I wanted to have that. I didn't end up drinking it too much. I had mostly water and I had frozen fruit because having something nice and icy cold while I was in that nice, warm, hot pool, it just felt fantastic to me. So I had bits of strawberry and I had little bits of apple that I was chewing. And I had, like, in earlier labor, I would have scrambled eggs and I'd have watered down oatmeal. Anything with protein in it is really good. I had chicken wraps. I had a ham sandwich from Subway. I had my hamburger and I just kept upping the protein, but you don't want to have a huge pasta dinner. So protein is what you need. And there are so many ways that you can get protein. So again, food and drink is super important. And yet it often leads, if they're telling you that you can't have these things in your labor and you're at the hospital and you're starving, this often leads to the other four things that I talked about with the failure to progress or not going into labor by a certain date. And they just schedule a C-section with restricting food or drink and putting the IV in. The IV is a natural birth trap. Restricting food and drink is a natural birth trap. And it's also a cesarean trap. Because once you have just the IV fluids and you're puffed up, that can cause distress as well. It can cause high blood pressure because now you're swelling up. You've got all this fluid retention and it's not natural fluids. And then you're restricted to the bed at the same time. So it's a real problem that we have these interventions and it leads to more cesareans.